Hello, my name is Andrea Palmer, and I'm the Grants Management and Compliance Division Manager for in the Housing Department for the City of Oxnard. Here to present to you the 2023-2024 mid-year reallocation for the HUD programs, Community Development Block Grant, and Home Investment Partnerships Program. Just a little background of the programs. There are three different programs. Two of them we will be discussing in this item, but there's Community Development Block Grant, or you will hear me refer to it as CDBG in future slides, the Home Investment Partnerships Program, or HOME for short, and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program, or ESG for short. They are called entitlement funds. This is different than competitive grants. Different cities and counties and states across the country receive the same exact entitlement funds and use them all differently, except for home and ESG. They're a little more prescribed, but CDBG can be used for a myriad of activities. So with entitlement funds, while you don't have to compete for them, the city receives them with having to provide a couple of reports to HUD. One is every 5 years, there has to be a consolidated plan that is submitted to HUD. That's a 5-year plan, so it's done every 5 years. And in those 5 years, there are annual action plans, which are done annually. This activity, when there's an annual plan in place, it's a little different than the consolidated plan. The consolidated plan describes needs and gaps of the community and how what would be priority in serving the community with prioritizing low and moderate income residents. The annual action plan is more specific and tailored to a 1 year or with maybe a multi-year within that 5-year period, but mainly a 1-year plan. And it includes specific funds to a specific type of activity, and it could be tied to either a specific city department or another partner. They are termed subrecipients, and sometimes they are for-profits, which are mainly consultants or contractors. And so when that happens, that process has to go to a public review. It has to go to council approval, go up for council approval, and then it has to go to HUD for final approval. Any significant or substantial changes that happen in the annual action plan or the consolidated plan for that matter must go back through the same process through public input council and HUD approvals. So here we are in the middle of the year with some changes to last year's annual action plan, and I will go into greater detail in the next slide. With CDBG, the rules are, the rules for all three of the programs are different, but CDBG, because they're shorter termed activities, HUD looks at how much money each city spends, and there is a regulation in place that cities cannot have more than 1.5 times the current award in their fund balance. And the HUD has its own information system, and with that, they're able to check how much money the city has in the fund balance. So what CDBG staff must do and does is look at the projects. Projects are typically report quarterly, but have to be assessed if they're not moving along in stride, they're not requesting reimbursed expenditures, they're not submitting reports and stating that they're serving the community and the capacity that they agreed upon. And when that happens, the funds sit in the fund balance. Between the pandemic and some of the costs in accordance to that resulted from the pandemic, some of our larger projects have fallen into the slow performing and no performing categories. Therefore, the city has hit a violation with how much money is in the fund balance. Staff has reviewed the slow performing projects and the projects that didn't complete at 100%. And what was determined is that $2,639,027 needs to be expended by the timeliness date that HUD reviews this information, which is May 2nd. And many of the projects that are already in place have around that amount. However, this item includes an additional amount of funds to see if we can get to the finish line and meet timeliness and get rid of that violation. So there are two housing projects that are experiencing cost overruns. One is Dolores Huerta Garden Apartments, and the other is Casa Aliento Apartments. And both of them have the same issues. They're experiencing a gap in financing and having cost overruns. This is causing project delays. And CDBG is a viable source of funds that can help them with improvements outside of the housing development itself. CDBG is in very, very few instances, very rare cases, able to develop housing. It can do everything around housing. It can do sidewalk improvements. It can do infrastructure improvements. It can even rehabilitate housing, but it cannot construct brand new housing. In these instances, there is the ability to help with off and on-site infrastructure improvements, such as plumbing, maybe connectivity to public utilities, electrical, sidewalks, handicap accessibility. Those different activities can support the project. And both projects have described that there are construction activities that would fall under those premises. So a little bit more about the two projects. Dolores Huerta Garden Apartments is a 58-unit affordable housing development. Staff is proposing to allocate $883,749 of CDBG funds to the project to keep it moving. And then there is the Casa Aliento Apartments, which is a 70-unit affordable housing development project. And staff is proposing $593,000 to that project. So in this table, there are the two projects that staff is proposing. There's an additional $40,431 that has been identified as project-related costs. Project-related costs can best be described as soft costs, such as having to advertise for public noticing. It could be environmental supports that are required with projects, all projects that are funded with CDBG. These are no different. It could be permit support. It could be internal staffing costs that's just dedicated to these projects. So a myriad of things. The reason for that as well is that there is an administrative cap on these funds of up to 20%, whereas with project-related costs, if it's specifically dedicated to a project, you can bill items such as staff time to it, and it won't hit the administrative cap. So In all, CDBG funds being proposed in this item total $1,517,180 of additional expenditures that will help these two projects and also help meet timeliness. The other part of this item is to allocate funds to Aspire Apartments, and that would be with the Home Investment Partnerships Program funds. Home funds are the opposite of CDBG in that they solely produce affordable housing and cannot be used for other activities. And the result, the report that we have to do back to HUD, ensure that we provide them with a number of units that have been developed with these funds. The city's balance of home dollars totals $1,856,200, and there is not a timeliness regulation to these funds. They are longer term funds. They do have an expiration date, and once they are committed, they do hit a time frame that they have to be expended, but it's not as short termed as it's not connected to the dollar amount like CDBG is. So staff is proposing to contribute $1,040,000 to the Aspire Apartments for gap financing, which will leave a balance of $816,200 in the city's home account. A little bit more about Aspire. The city has previously committed $1.2 million of Home American Rescue Plan funds to the project. Those are not entitlement funds per se. They're one-time allocations that were provided through the pandemic period. The project itself is constructing 88 units of affordable housing, and 40,000 of that $1 million is for project related costs for the items that I mentioned with the CDBG project. So similar need there. With this mid-year reallocation, staff is requesting that council conduct a public hearing and receive comments related to the amendment to the 2023-24 annual action plan, approve the amendment of this action plan, reallocating community development block grants and home funds, authorizing the city manager and his designee to execute the required applications, certifications, and other pertinent documents to submit this amendment to HUD, authorize the city manager and his designees to appropriate agreements with loan recipients and subrecipients, which are the sub-funding partners to these funds, and to adjust the funding activities not to exceed 10% if the programs require more or less funding to meet their goals and objectives, and authorize the city manager and his designees to appropriate home and reappropriate CDBG funds to the proposed activities identified in this report. This concludes this presentation. Thank you for your time and have a great day.